Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown,
the unofficial sumo podcast
for official sumo fans.
Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown. This is Ryan.
This is Jake.
And this is our Hatsu Banzuke review. And we are joined once again by a very special guest. He's been with us before on a Banzuke episode. It is Leonid from the Tachiai blog. Leonid, how are you doing today?
Good. Hey guys, good to be here.
Very glad to have you. You're gonna have to help me out on some of the logic that the Banzuke committee was using this time around, because there's some head scratching decisions in here that don't really make sense to me. So
if logic is the word for it.
yeah, exactly.
So we're gonna need your brain to help us figure it out, but we're not gonna need you too much to figure out the top spot. Yokozuna, that's pretty easy to figure out. Teruno Fuji, it's pretty hard to move the guy when he's the only Yokozuna and he also didn't lose a match. So we'll keep him there this time, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we'll jump down to Ozeki. Once again, it's pretty easy. Takakeisho finished with more wins than Shodai. So Takakeisho previously Ozeki West. He will now be Ozeki East, and Shodai will be Ozeki West. Sekiwake, once again, fairly simple here on the east side. Mitake Yumi, he had 11 wins, so he's going to stay as the East Sekiwake here. And on the west side, we're going to have Takanosho. So he's going to be jumping up from Maegashira 2 up to Sekiwake West after his 11 wins. So that 11 wins was enough to jump him ahead of Daisho and Wakataka Kage, who were ranked ahead of him but only had 8 wins. And so Takanosho will be Sekiwake for the 5th time in his career. One of my favorite stats for this basho. He's been Sekiwake 5 times and never been Komosubi once.
Yeah. Do you think he's going to be another permanent Sekiwake like Mitake Yumi, or where do you see him going right away?
Definitely not Komosubi. He's either going to get 6 losses, drop down to Maegashira 1, or he's going to stay there and then eventually become Ozeki. But it would be amazing if he had like 20 basho in the Sanyaku ranks and all of them were Sekiwake.
Yeah.
Let's will it into existence.
But yeah,
all
so
right.
far not complicated Banzuke stuff at all.
No, fairly simple. Obviously, I got all of those correct. Leonid, how you doing in your prediction so far? Did you get all those correct?
Yep.
All right. How about Komosubi rank? Did you get that correct, or did you flip-flop those guys like I did?
I flip-flopped those guys, and I think even some of the real cognoscenti on the sumo forum were pretty puzzled by this. Yeah, I mean, Meisei was West Sekiwake, and he had 8 losses, dropping him to Komosubi, whereas Daisho was Maegashira 1 East with 8 wins. And it would have been perfectly straightforward and I think conventional to bump Daisho up to Komosubi East and drop Meisei to Komosubi West. And I'm really not sure why they went the other way, unless it's because they could only slide Wakataka Kage over up by half a rank, and they decided to do the same thing with Daisho.
Yeah, that would kind of seem like the fair thing to do, but fair doesn't really seem to be one of the Banzuke committee's top priorities.
No.
But it's as good of reason as any, because I don't have any. Yeah, this one surprised me. I thought it was a slam dunk. Daisho was going to be Komosubi East and Meisei would be Komosubi West. I redid some research that I did before the prediction just to kind of see if that historically has been the case. And so every instance that I found since 2000 where we had a Sekiwake East or West with a 7-8 record versus a Maegashira 1 on the East side with an 8-7 record, there were 6 cases, and 5 of those times the Maegashira 1 East jumped ahead of the falling Sekiwake, regardless of whether that Sekiwake was previously on the East or West side. But there was that one instance when the Sekiwake West only dropped down to Komosubi East and the Maegashira 1 East only dropped up to Komosubi West. So there is some historical precedent for it, but it goes against the vast majority of what's happening there. I couldn't find any discernible reason for the previous case, as I can't find a discernible reason for this case either.
Yep.
It sounds like there's times like these where everybody guessed it wrong. Like all the people like you guys who follow the math intricately every single time, and everybody guesses one way, but the Banzuke committee does it the other way. Kind of, I don't know. To me, it's always like, yes, there's another point of evidence that they're kind of winging it a little bit too. Oh well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I put way more thought into this than they do.
Yep. And I find that, decisions like this are not really a reason to change what we do next time, because they're more likely to revert to precedent than to do whatever weird thing they did again.
Yeah, as I went through figuring out like why what they didn't line up with what I thought they would do, I'm just finding a lot of the stuff they did kind of goes against a lot of recent precedent that we've been seeing. And it feels like there's one a year where the Banzuke committee just kind of throws their hands into the air, just we're going to go crazy on this one. And then they kind of go back to more precedent. And I think this is kind of the one where they just decided to go a little, not too crazy, but a little crazy in some spots. So I'm not going to take a whole lot from this Banzuke. I think this is one of those where you just, all right, this one was weird, but we can't take a whole lot from it. Is that kind of what you're thinking, Leonid?
Yeah, and I think there was some speculation about exactly when and where they made the Banzuke, because they had a pretty short turnaround. I think there wasn't like a place in Fukuoka where they could all have a meeting with appropriate COVID protocols. So they went back to Tokyo, and then they only had a day to do it or something like that. So there might have been some just disruption to whatever it is they usually do that led them to make some head-scratching calls.
All right, I'll have to track their traveling plans a lot more whenever they're making the Banzuke, so I know if I should expect a little bit more randomness and try to adjust for that. All right, we'll move on to the Maegashira 1 rank. On the east side, we're going to have Wakataka Kage. He's going to move over from the Maegashira 1 west slot to the Maegashira 1 east slot after his 8-7 record. Little tough for Wakataka Kage being a Maegashira 1, getting a winning record, but not quite cracking into the Sanyaku ranks. But we've seen that happen quite a bit over the past few years. And then at Maegashira 1 west, another little surprise. We have Kiribayama here, dropping only 1 rank after a 6-9 record from Komusubi. I am going to make him a luck of the Banzuke candidate, because a 6-9 record dropping only 1 slot is pretty lucky. And I'm actually really mad at myself for missing this one. My final draft had Ura at Maegashira 1 West, but my first draft had Kiribayama at the Maegashira 1 West slot before I talked myself out of it. And I'm really mad that I just messed with it. I'm always super mad when I switch something from my first draft that was initially correct. But I think this is going to start a trend that we're going to see. Well, I guess with one other Rikishi. There's only one other Rikishi that was in the Sanyaku. But Sanyaku bias is very, very strong in this Banzuke, and I would say joy bias is stronger this Banzuke than we've seen in the past. Would you agree with that, Leonid, kind of as an overall trend?
I absolutely. And I think, I also got this one wrong. I really thought it was kind of a coin flip based on recent precedent. Like if Ura had been, I think, rank or 2 higher, it would have been obvious that he would have gotten that Maegashira 1 spot. This way, it was close based on all the precedents, but it did seem needlessly lenient to only drop Kiribayama 1 rank with a 6-9 when there was a perfectly good Rikishi to go in that spot, namely Ura. So that's what I ended up doing as well. But I knew that was one of the things I was least confident in terms of the predictions.
Yeah, I like the words you use there. Needlessly lenient. Speaking of needlessly lenient, at Maegashira 2, on the east side, you do have Ura going on that east slot, which will be a career high rank for Ura at Maegashira 2. But Ichi Nojo only dropping to Maegashira 2 West after a 5-10 rank from Komusubi. This is just another indication of the Sanyaku and joy bias being very strong for this Banzuke. I thought I was being nice to Ichinojo when I only dropped him 3 ranks from Komusubi after his 5-10 record. But this jet-lagged Banzuke committee who was throwing this together on the bullet train back to Tokyo, they were even nicer to him as they gave him a slot over both Endo and Tamawashi, who I had him ranked behind. Endo was also in the Joy, had a winning record, so it's not like Endo would be coming out of the Joy, kind of like Ura, who Kiribayama got the nod ahead of. And then there was Tamawashi. He wasn't quite in the Joy, but he did end up with 3 Sanyaku matches. I thought that might give him a little bit of a bump, but Banzuke committee saw it differently. And I think this is probably one of the biggest surprises on this Banzuke, wouldn't you say, Leonid?
I think it's the biggest. Yeah, I think by the numbers, Ichinojo would deserve to be Megashira 5, and I saw some Banzukes that had him there. I thought he would obviously end up ahead of guys like Hokuto Fuji and Okinaumi based on Sanyaku bias, but I think pushing him above Tamawashi and Endo, again, was needlessly lenient.
Yeah, it's really hard to kind of figure out where the dividing line is going to be for Rikishi dropping out of the Sanyaku ranks. I mean, if it's like a Komusubi with a 7 and 8 record, okay, Megashira 1. But then after that, it just kind of seems to be random.
Bradley, if it's
almost.
a Komusubi with a 6 and 9 record, also Megashira 1.
Yeah, exactly. It just kind of seems to be really hard to figure out. All right, who does the falling Sanyaku Rikishi get to be ahead of? Because I figured, all right, if you're in the Joy, you're kind of at that same level as the Sanyaku Rikishi, but obviously they're kind of treating Sanyaku as just a tier above the rest of the Joy, even though they have effectively the same schedule.
And I think if you look at the history, that isn't usually the case. So I think Ichinojo's placement here is anomalously high. And given several very similar Banzukes, they won't usually do that again unless it's some sort of new trend with this particular Banzuke committee.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's Kageyaki and it's always needlessly lenient.
Well, we'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get there.
All right, we'll move on to Magashira 3, where we're going to have the 2 people we thought would be ahead of Ichinojo. On the east side, we're going to have Tamawashi, and on the west side, we are going to have Endo. So Tamawashi rising up 3 ranks after a 9 and 6 record from Magashira 6. Endo rising 1 rank after an 8 and 7 record from Magashira 4. So that's one thing that I'm seeing with putting Ichinojo at Magashira 2 West. It does prevent Tamawashi and Endo from getting a higher promotion than their math would suggest they should get, but still putting Ichinojo there, just dropping him 2 after a 5 and 10 record, that still just seems I can't see that actually being the reason for putting him ahead of them, to just prevent them from being over promoted. Maybe that's something they were looking at. It's like, we don't want to over promote people outside of the Sanyaku at the if it would further hurt somebody that was in the Sanyaku. I don't know. Grasping at straws there, really.
Got to justify it somehow, right?
Yep. But then again, the order of Tamawashi and Endo surprised me a little bit. In my initial prediction, I had Endo going ahead of Tamawashi. I mean, they both deserve to be the same exact rank, but I thought Endo had Joy Bias working for him. Apparently, the Banzuke committee didn't really see a big difference in the schedule between Endo and Tamawashi to kind of give that Joy Bias in favor of Endo here. And so they did give the nod to Tamawashi here, who had the better record, I think, is kind of what they used as the tiebreaker here. But I would have thought that Endo being fully in the Joy would have kind of given him the nod over Tamawashi here. We'll go to Magashira 4. On the east side, we're going to have Okinaumi dropping 1 rank after a 7 and 8 record for Magashira 3. And on the west side, we have Hokuto Fuji rising 8 ranks after an 11 and 4 record from Magashira 12. Not any controversy, I think, at this rank. Both of these guys landed right exactly where I thought they were. Looking at Leonid's prediction, he had them falling here as well. So nothing really to discuss with these guys. Pretty by the books promotion and demotion here. Magashira 5 on the east side, we're going to have another Luck of the Banzuke candidate. I don't think I mentioned it. Obviously, Ichinojo is a candidate to win the Luck of the Banzuke, and Endo I have as a candidate to win Snub of the Banzuke. overall, I'd say this is a lucky Banzuke as opposed to like a snubbed Banzuke. Yeah, Leonid.
And I think that's because obviously Hakuho retired, so everybody gets a free half a rank move up.
True.
And then with Asanayama, not participating, the lower portion of the Megashira ranks gets gets a 2 rank or a 2 slot move for free. So that was always going to be a lucky Banzuke.
Yep. So Maegashira 5 East, luck of the Banzuke candidate, no show, dropping 3 ranks after a 5-10 record from Maegashira 2. And on Maegashira 5 West, we're going to have Chiyoshoma rising 2 ranks after an 8-7 record from Maegashira 7. And no show is another instance on this Banzuke where the joy bias is very strong this basho for some Rikishi, except for Endo, who didn't get the benefit of that. But I had predicted Onosho being 1 rank lower at Maegashira 6, and his competition for this Maegashira 5 East rank were Chiyoshoma and Abi. Both of them were well out of the joy. So despite both of them deserving to be ahead of Onosho based on their previous rank and record by a full rank, they did not get the nod, as my guess would be the strength of schedule was seen as significantly worse than Onoshos. And so despite deserving to be a rank lower than Chiyoshoma, Onosho was ranked ahead of him here. And I think this was probably your biggest miss that you had on the Banzuke, wasn't it, Leonid?
Yes, this was my only miss by more than 1 full rank. I got him off by 1.5 because I had Hoshoryu ahead of him at Megashira 6 East. And I had him at Megashira 6 West. So I went strictly by the numbers, which in this part of the Banzuke seemed reasonable. There seemed no reason to push him to push him ahead of Rikishi, who deserved to be higher, by our usual rank and record system. I would have given him a tiebreaker over anybody who had the same numerical, sort of earned rank, but I didn't see any reason to push him ahead of them. But obviously the Banzuke committee did.
Yeah. Yeah, I did have Onosho being ahead of Hoshoryu, mostly because of that joy bias I kind of baked in there a little bit, so I didn't miss him by as much. And I will point out, Leonid, that you missed Onosho by 3 ranks, and I didn't miss anybody by more than 2 on this one. So in that case, in that spectrum alone, I did do a little bit better than you on this prediction.
There you go. The student has become the teacher.
That's right.
Pat yourself on the back, but we can also look at our GTB scores.
Yep.
I have my issues with the Guess the Banzuke scoring. We keep track of our own scoring here at Grand Sumo Breakdown, and I like to stick with that because usually it does me pretty well when I compare. Yeah. When I compare to other people, it sometimes makes me look better than Guess the Banzuke.
Also, Onosho marks the end of the joy for this tournament, right?
Yep.
So we'll have a couple guys, because we have a couple guys in the same stable that can't face each other at the top. So I guess Chiyoshoma's in the half joy or something, I guess, whatever you'd call it.
Yeah, but Takakeisho can't face Takanosho, so Chiyoshoma would feasibly jump up into that spot.
Yep.
And
Endo and
Daisho can't face Endo, yeah. And Okinoumi can't face Hokuto Fuji. They're both Hakaku.
Oh. Yeah. I guess I didn't notice that because neither of those guys have been in the joy for a while.
Hokuto Fuji's just come back into the joy after a 1 basho absence. Come on.
More than 1 basho is way too much for me to remember. So
fair. All right. So we'll jump down to the Agashira 6 rank, where on the east side, we do have Hoshoryu dropping 1 rank after his 7-8 record for Agashira 5. And on the west side, we're going to have Abi rising 9 ranks after a 12-3 record for Agashira 15. This is another small surprise to me, having Hoshoryu being ranked ahead of Abi. But I think that's just kind of the difference in their schedule, where Hoshoryu was facing clearly a far superior schedule for the most part of the basho. So that'd be my reasoning as to why they had him ahead of Abi here. Let's go down to Maegashira 7. On the east side, we have Takayasu dropping 2 ranks after a 6-9 record for Maegashira 5, and Takada Fuji dropping 3 ranks after a 5-10 record for Maegashira 4. And this, with Takada Fuji falling at Maegashira 7 West, this is just another case where I underestimated the joy bias for this Banzuke. I had Hide no Umi going ahead of Takada Fuji for the Maegashira 7 West spot, but once again, because Takada Fuji was in the Joy, he gets the nod. And so typically how I look at Joy bias, it's just as a tiebreaker between 2 Rikishi that deserve the same spot on the Banzuke. And that has worked for the most part. But this Banzuke, like we mentioned before, it's a little different because Joy bias is taking Rikishi like Ichi Nojo, Onosho, Takada Fuji, who all deserve to be at least a full rank lower than somebody who is outside of the Joy, and then putting them ahead of that Rikishi that numerically deserve to be ranked ahead of them. So like I said, I think this is a fairly isolated instance for this Banzuke, and it hasn't been a trend in the past Banzuke, so we'll just kind of see if it continues for them to just really give strong bias towards the Rikishi and the Joy to go so far as to rank them ahead of other Rikishi that typically in past Banzukes we would have seen them ranked behind.
Yeah, that one in particular, like I didn't even think about any order other than Hide no Umi followed by Takada Fuji. And I think on 9 out of 10, like comparable Banzukes in the past, you'd find that that's how it would go. So
yeah,
don't want to adjust our priors too much based on this one example.
Yeah, and Takada Fuji is almost kind of fringe Joy, where you're at Maegashira 4, Maegashira 5. You might not necessarily face the full Sanyaku schedule, because by the time it's your turn to face them, you might have a bad enough record that they're going to swap people like Abi or Tamawashi in instead of you. So I don't have Takada Fuji's schedule right in front of me, but my guess is he probably did not face a full schedule. And now that I say that, I'm going to look it up because I need to be right. Let's see. He fought both Ozeki, both Sekiwake, both Komusubi, but he did not get Terano Fuji because they're in the same table. Damn it. Okay. So he did face a full Sanyaku slate.
That he was able to face. Yeah.
Yeah. So throw that reasoning out the window.
Done and done.
Yep. So we'll jump to Maegashira 8 on the east side. We have Hide no Umi, who I will have a snub of the Banzuke, just because he deserved to be ranked ahead of Takada Fuji, and it's kind of weird that they put him behind him. And then at Maegashira 8 West, for the 3rd consecutive Basho, we are going to have Tobizaru. He's going to be a Luck of the Banzuke candidate. He is staying at the Maegashira 8 West rank after his 2nd straight 7-8 Basho at Maegashira 8 West. And for the 2nd straight time, there's really nobody that has a good enough reason to take that spot from him. So 3 straight times, Tobizaru will be Maegashira 8 West.
I think somebody on Sumo Forum might have actually tried to look this up and found 1 or 2 instances in the past where this had happened. But if it happens again, then I think it'll be a unique event. If he holds on to that rank 4 times in a row, it's a 7 and 8. Yeah.
We'll have to keep track of that. I think Chiyo tied you, actually. I want to say Maegashira 11. I think he was there for a little bit. Well, he was Maegashira 11 West, then Maegashira 11 East 2 times in a row. So I think that's what I was thinking of for him. So not quite the same as Tobizaru being the exact same rank 3 times in a row. And I actually think Tobizaru is the first of 2 people that are going to be at the exact same rank 3 times in a row. Yeah, because we'll get to him, but Ishiura at Maegashira 12 East, granted, one of the times he was absent for COVID, and so his rank was locked, but this will be the 3rd straight Banzuke where we have Ishiura at the Maegashira 12 East rank. So a little bit of spoiler of things to come. Let's move on to Maegashira 9, where on the east side, we're going to see Chiyo no Kuni rising up 5 ranks after a 9-6 record from Magashira 14. And on the west side, we are going to have Shima no Umi dropping 3 ranks after a 5-10 record from Magashira 6. And I am going to give actually Shima no Umi a snub of the Bonsai candidacy here, even though he only dropped 3 ranks after a 5-10 record, because this one surprises me a little bit and saddens me because it's breaking a lot of rules that had formed for me for like tiebreaker situations. Both of these guys deserve to be the same rank. I think it was like Magashira 10 or 11, really. So if we looked at the east-west side tiebreaker, where typically the guy who was previously on the east side would be ranked ahead if the other guy was on the west side, that is not followed here, as Chiyo no Kuni was previously on the west side and ranked lower than Shima no Umi, and Shima no Umi was on the east side and ranked ahead of Chiyo no Kuni, but they did flip Chiyo no Kuni over to the east side. And then also, if we look at who had the tougher schedule, we talk about joy bias all the time. They fought the tougher schedule. They deserve the benefit of the doubt. Well, Shima no Umi was ranked at Magashira 6. Chiyo no Kuni was all the way down at Magashira 14. Obviously, Shima no Umi had the tougher schedule there, but Chiyo no Kuni jumped over him. So 2 of those tiebreaker situations kind of went against me here. And so I'm starting to think that some of these little rules I'm making up in my head are just that, made up, which saddens me because I'd like there to be reason and logic to all of this.
You thought you were onto something, but
I was hoping.
I think generally the pattern you described does tend to hold. And again, like we'll see pretty much the same thing, except less extreme lower down the Banzuke with Aoyama and Tochinoshin, where this time around they just seem to, once we left the joy, they just seem to break all the ties in favor of the guy who had more wins. And put aside all of the other rules in terms of kind of Banzuke rank tiers, east, west, etc.
Yeah, and I'm sure
on the bullet train in the in the rush.
Yeah, I'm sure you can go back to probably just the last Bonsai review where they didn't put the guy with the better record ahead of the other guy, and so that constantly changing, which is why I don't know. Has anybody ever gotten a perfect guess on Guess the Bonsai that you know of, Leonid?
No, I think people have come pretty close. And I think last time when there were only 82 points available because of Hakuho's absence, somebody got like a 76 or something like that. So I think there have been a couple of results like that where somebody switches, to Rikishi or something along those lines, but nobody's ever gotten it. Right.
It's probably similar to like getting a perfect March Madness bracket or something like that. It's statistically possible. You can get a very high percentage of guesses right, but when you got to make that many guesses, it's probably never going to happen.
Yep. So we'll move down to the bottom portion of the Bonsai at Magashira 10 on the east side. We're going to have Miyogiryu here, falling only 7 ranks after a 2-13 record from Magashira 3. So pretty lucky drop for Miyogiryu here, but predictable lucky drop for Miyogiryu, as there was kind of a clear break in who deserved to be ranked where, and he had that joy bias working for him. So I think it was fairly clear to me that this would be the landing spot for Miyogiryu, even though those dropping guys with like 2-13, 3-12 records, it really can be a crapshoot sometimes of where they end up, and they do have a very large range in where they could end up. Magashira 10 on the west side, I've got another luck of the Bonsai candidate going to Aqua, who is rising 6 ranks after a 9-6 record from Magashira 16. He absolutely, based on how the Bonsai fell out, he absolutely deserved to be here. I don't think he was luckily ranked ahead of anybody he shouldn't be, but just jumping 6 ranks after a 9-6 record, that's pretty lucky. So give him.
There was really nobody else to put there, and part of the reason I think we both predicted Miyogiryu to be as high as he was that that helped to fill what would have been an even larger hole in the Banzuke than it still turns out to be.
Because if Miyogiryu dropped further, we'd have Aqua and Sada no Umi at the spot, both jumping up 6 ranks after 9-6 records, and you have other crazy stuff that you'd have to do. So dropping Miyogiryu there, it really seems like the 2 and 13, 3 and 12, Magashira 1 through 4 guys, they're just kind of used as a stopgap, kind of similar to anybody who has a 7 and 8 record. If you just stick them there, like we've seen with Tobizaru, these guys are just treated, okay, where do we need to make up some room on the Bonsai? Okay, right here, that's where you're going to go.
Yeah, they're used as like, repair materials for the breaks that we have to create.
Yeah, they're the grout that you use to repair the concrete.
There you go.
To put it in my construction terms.
There you go. Tobizaru, we'll refer to him as the grout now.
Yeah. Magashira 11 on the east side. We're going to have Sada Naomi rising up 5 ranks after a 9 and 6 record from Magashira 16. They didn't do the thing that I absolutely hate when you have 2 guys at the same rank with the same record and they put somebody in between them. We had Aqua and Sada Naomi, both Magashira 16 with 9 and 6 record. They kept them together, so I'm very happy about that. Always angers me when they split those guys apart. And then at Magashira 11 on the west side, we have Terutsuyoshi, who is also staying at the same rank this basho after a 7 and 8 record in Kyushu. Magashira 12 on the east side, we already spoiled this one, but it's Ishiura staying at the same rank after a 7 and 8 record. And this one I did not predict. For Terutsuyoshi and Tobizaru, it seemed pretty clear that they needed to stay at their spots to prevent over promotion or over demotion of somebody. Here, it really felt like they could have put Chiyo Tairyu ahead of Ishiura, give Ishiura just a half rank demotion so that he has something to show for his 7 and 8 record. But nope, in this case, we have Chiyo Tairyu falling 2 ranks after a 6 and 9 record from Magashira 10. I think they were both on the east side previously. So this is another like tie-breaking situation that we saw where the person who had the better record went ahead of the other Rikishi who was previously ranked ahead of them.
I mean, usually with the 7 and 8 guys, they'll try to give them a drop of at least of a half a rank if it's reasonable, if there is a reasonable candidate. So I was surprised they didn't do that here. And again, maybe you can invoke fairness for treating Ishiura and Terutsuyoshi, who were in consecutive Banzuke positions with the same record equally, but it's not like that's a logic that's always followed.
Yeah. All right, move on to Magashira 13. On the east side, we're going to have Chiyomaru rising up 2 ranks after an 8 and 7 record from Magashira 15. And on the west side, we're going to have Yutakayama sliding from Magashira 13 east to Magashira 13 west after his 7 and 8 record. And so this is a spot at Magashira 13 West where I had Ichi Yamamoto going, rising up from Juryo, which a couple people on Twitter, Leonid included, and Ed Serene, want to give him a shout out, told me I was going to have Ichi Yamamoto ranked too high, which after they said that, after I posted the Bonsai and they said that, it made sense to me. And I'll explain why in a moment. But I also want to take this time to point out that Ed Serene also thought that Abi would be ranked at Magashira 4, and he ended up at Magashira 6. So why are we even listening to the criticism of a guy who couldn't get Abi's rank correct? I mean, come on.
About that.
I didn't get it right either, but I was at least closer than he was.
Okay.
So yeah, on the preview episode, I dove even deeper into the mind of the Bonsai committee, trying to figure out their logic on who they place where. And I came up with a theory about how the Bonsai committee is protecting the higher ranked Rikishi, which boy, howdy did they do this Bonsai. But where it's different than the Sanyaku and Joy bias, where it comes into effect in this bottom portion of the Bonsai. Basically, my thought is if 2 Rikishi are tied for a certain rank, I believe that the Bonsai committee will place the Rikishi with the better record, which they did time after time on this Bonsai, higher than the other Rikishi with whom he's competing against for that spot, unless placing the Rikishi with a higher record would force a larger demotion than the math would dictate. So in that case, the higher ranked Rikishi would be placed ahead of the Rikishi with the better record. So when deciding to place Yutakayama and Koto no Waka on my Bonsai, I used this theory for them, but I kind of excluded it or kept it to just those 2 but I really needed to tie Ichi Yamamoto into that as well, because in my Banzuke prediction, I had Koto Nowaka, who is ranked higher than Yutakayama, but had a worse record, falling 3 ranks after his 6-9 record, and Yutakayama falling 1.5 ranks after his 7-8 record. 1.5 ranks is more than what the math would typically require his demotion to be. But it prevented Koto Nowaka from getting a 3.5 rank drop, and he had the higher record, so I figured they'd protect Koto Nowaka. What I hadn't considered is I could keep both of these guys from being over-demoted by simply being a dick to the Juryo Rikishi, Ichi Yamamoto, and having both Yutakayama and Koto Nowaka being ranked ahead of them, so neither one would need to be demoted more than their record deserved, since they were both ranked ahead of Ichi Yamamoto. So I think the logic still works. I just didn't wrangle enough Rikishi into that accounting when I started using that logic.
Yeah, so I think to kind of revisit the grout theory, it works the same with the Juryo guys, but in the opposite direction, whereas the Joy Rikishi with big losing records, you can push considerably above where the math would predict.
Yeah.
The Juryo guys, you can push as low as you need to make sure that they end up below any Makauchi incumbents with winning records, and to keep anybody from getting over-demoted, if at all possible.
Yeah. How it had been working on the past few Bonsais, it worked pretty well where, okay, I've just placed we've been working with the rule for a while where no Juryo Rikishi is going to be placed above any Makauchi Rikishi that had a winning record. And for the vast majority of the time over the past few years, that's played out. We've seen a couple of exceptions, but vast majority of the time that's played out. And so over the past 3 or 4 Bonsais, we've seen, okay, we've moved up the last Makauchi Rikishi that had a winning record. And then immediately followed by that was the first Juryo Rikishi that deserved promotion up into Makauchi. And so I just kind of automatically, okay, Chiyomaru, he's the last guy in Makauchi that had a winning record, placed him. All right, Ichi Yamamoto is the guy that I need to place right after them. So it was just kind of an automatic switch in my head that flipped that I kind of need to make sure I turn off, because obviously that's not going to be the case every single time.
Yeah,
the one way to think about it, other than the Banzuke committee just being mean to the Juryo guys, is that they do face a completely different schedule. So, the math that we use actually works surprisingly well for predicting which Juryo guys should trade places with which Makauchi guys. But then in terms of where they go on the Banzuke, it's almost completely useless. I mean, except for rank ordering the Juryo guys. And I think they just don't. I don't remember exactly where Ichi Yamamoto would go by the math.
Agashira 11, I think.
I was going to say maybe even higher than that. But it was obvious they weren't gonna put him up there, and it's fair enough if you're fighting the rest of Juryo as opposed to the rest of Makauchi.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move down to Agashira 14. We've already talked about all the guys at this rank. On the east side, we're going to have Koto Nowaka landing here, and on the west side, this is where Ichi Yamamoto will be landing. He will be at his career high rank. So Koto Nowaka is dropping 3 ranks after his 6-9 record from Agashira 11. Ichi Yamamoto rising 8 ranks after a 13-2 Yusho from Juryo 4. Agashira 15 on the east side, we're going to have Wakamoto Haru, brother of Wakataka Kage. He is going to be making his Makauchi debut, which obviously means he will be at his career high rank. And on the west side, we're going to see Tochi Noshin dropping 2 ranks after a 6-9 record from Agashira 13. We kind of mentioned this earlier. Both Leonid and I had Aoyama going at this spot in our predictions. It's very similar to the Shima no Umi and Chiyo no Kuni situation, where both Rikishi deserve to be at the same rank, and the Banzuke committee rewarded the Rikishi with the better record instead of the Rikishi that was previously higher ranked and on the east side. So that's just the decisions they made on this Banzuke. Hopefully they just choose a way to deal with it and stick with it for like the next 10 or so years so I can get at least one perfect Banzuke. That's all I ask. Just use the same logic for a long enough time that I can get one perfect prediction. But if they keep changing their logic, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, the right answers are written on the back of like a cocktail napkin under the bullet train seats or something like that. But it'll be interesting to see how much they revert on the next Banzuke to the recent precedent compared to like the weird potentially one-off things they did for this one.
Yeah. And I will note that this is the first time in the past 20 years that a Maegashira 9 East Rikishi with a 4-11 record ended up below a Maegashira 13 Rikishi with a 6-9 record, which is what happened here. Granted, this is only the third time that it's happened in the past 20 years, but still, it's the first time in at least the past 20 years. I didn't go any further back than 20 years because even going back 20 years, that data on how they did Bonscase that is very irrelevant to how they're going to do Bonscase now. But I still just like to look and see how it was done in the past. So it's just me saying that it is a little odd that Aoyama ended up behind Tochinoshin here. At Maegashira 16 on the east side, that is where we will have Aoyama landing. I will give him a snub of the Banzuke candidacy. And on the west side, we're going to have Tsurugisho. So Aoyama is dropping 7 ranks after a 4-11 record from Maegashira 9. Tsurugisho rising up 3 ranks after a 9-6 record from Juryo 1. I used to struggle a lot with where to put these Juryo guys, but with the exception of Ichi Yamamoto on this one, I did nail exactly where all the Juryo guys would end up. So I feel like I am starting to figure out what Leonid was talking about, figuring out where to fill the spots on the Banzuke with the Juryo grout. So I do feel good about that. Then we'll move on to Maegashira 17 on the east side. We're going to have Kotoeko dropping 9 ranks after his 3-12 record from Maegashira 9. And we'll have Kaisei at Maegashira 17 West sliding over from Maegashira 17 East after his 7-8 record. Another fairly simple placement on the Banzuke. Nothing really to discuss there. And then Maegashira 18, we're going to have Oho making his Makuuchi debut, rising 7 ranks after an 11-4 record from Juryo 6. And honestly, based on how the rest of the Banzuke played out, I'm kind of surprised that they did go with Oho here ahead of Kagayaki, where we saw Onosho deserving to be a rank below Hoshoryu and being ahead of him. We saw Takeda Fuji deserving to be a rank below Hide no Umi and going ahead of him. So the joy bias was in full effect, but the anti-Juryo bias was not quite working the same way because Oho deserved to be ranked ahead of Kagayaki by 1 full rank, but I'm a little surprised they didn't just make that switch with Kagayaki having been in the...
Uh-oh. Is Ryan frozen for you as well, Leonid?
Yep.
Oh, no. Hopefully he comes back in a moment.
It's Ryan.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Start over somewhere. We'll get back in.
Yeah, no, it's okay. My wife tripped over the Ethernet cord and pulled it right out of my computer. So Oho is going to be making his Makuuchi debut at Maegashira 18 East, rising 7 ranks after an 11-4 record from Juryo 6. Based on how the rest of the Banzuke played out, I'm kind of surprised that Oho did go ahead of Kagayaki here. Oho deserved to be ahead of Kagayaki by 1 full rank, but like we saw with some Rikishi falling out of the joy, they ended up ranked ahead of other Rikishi that should have been behind them for a full rank. So to see them give Kagayaki the boot here just really warms my heart. It's situations like these that I start to wonder how much personal feelings could take part in the Banzuke rankings, because I know there's a lot of hype for Oho coming. There's a lot of hopes for him, and there's the exact opposite of hype for Kagayaki. So I wonder if the Banzuke committee just wanted to see Oho in the top division as soon as possible. Once again, Oho absolutely earned his spot in Makuuchi. I'm not saying that they gave him unnecessary favorable treatment because he, by the math, deserved to be ahead of Kagayaki here. But we have seen similar cases in the past where the Makuuchi Rikishi, who deserves to be ranked ahead, or the Juryo Rikishi, who deserves to be ranked ahead of the Makuuchi Rikishi, the Makauchi Rikshi was taken in this final spot here as opposed to the Juryo Rikshi. So a little bit of a surprise here, but I did get it right, and that makes me happy.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and forth, and I'm also not sure how much my personal hype for seeing Oho in the top division influenced my prediction. But the way I reasoned it out is that being 5-10 at Megashira 14 is almost a guarantee of demotion. You have a record that places you well outside of the top division, even with the super rare 18E rank on the Banzuke, which I think is only the second time we've had it in the six basho era since 1958. And the one previous time when Nishikigi famously survived with a 5-10 from Megashira 14, you had to take like a Juryo 6 guy with an 8-7 record or something like that as your next best option. So they really didn't deserve to be promoted, whereas Oho, just by one win, deserved to be right there in that last Makauchi slot, and I think that's what that's how I reasoned it out. Or maybe they just set six straight losing records in Makauchis, and now.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, all right, you've done enough losing. We've been nice enough to you. We've given you every chance you could have possibly deserved and more. Get out of here.
Yeah.
We've under-demoted you every single time for 2 years.
We've given you every chance.
Yep. And so this is where all 42 Rikshi will be placed. Unlike the 41 Rikshi we had in the top division last time, we do have a full contingent of 42 Makauchi Rikshi. Our demotees going down to Juryo, because we had 4 guys coming up, those being Ichi Yamamoto, Wakamoto Haru, Tsurugisho, and Oho. They are replacing Asanoyama, who had to sit out due to suspension. The aforementioned Kagayaki, Sho Hozan, had a 4-11 record from Magashira 17, and we're also filling up the spot vacated by Hakuho's retirement.
We technically have yet another vacancy, though, from Hidenoumi being suspended. So
True.
despite having Hakuho gone and Asanoyama no longer in the top division, we still keep the streak going of at least one wonky spot because of a suspension or something like that.
Yep, exactly. Hidenoumi being held out of this basho as they investigate some possible illegal gambling activity from him. So let's take a quick look and see how I did on this Banzuke. I got a total of 22 bullseyes out of a possible 42. That is the Rikshi at the exact numerical rank and on the correct side. So that's 52% placed at the exact correct position. And then I had an additional 8 Rikshi at the correct rank, but on the wrong side. So that's 30 total Rikshi at the correct rank, and that is 71%. I will point out on Guess the Banzuke, the highest score had 32 Rikshi at the correct rank. So I was only off of that by 2. Leonid, how did you do on Guess the Banzuke this go around?
Pretty much exactly the same. I had, except for the fact that I had 23 Rikishi at the exact position and 7 at the right rank, but on the wrong side. So also 30 overall, and 1 more at their exact slot. I think that 1 more being Ichi Yamamoto.
Yeah. Yep, I think that makes sense. So if you're curious, if you also play Guess the Banzuke and you're curious how you stack up against me, my Shikona on there is Gosho Biyama. This basho, I had the 9th best prediction out of 133 guesses, and my overall rank for Guess the Banzuke is now number 10. So if you're looking for Gosho Biyama on Guess the Banzuke, it'll be really easy. It'll be one of 10 names highlighted in green to highlight the best of the best. I don't think
that uses like a rolling average, right? How does that work generally? Is it like your last year or so or something like that?
I think
the
so.
last 6 basho, and it's decrease. So it's sort of forgetting, right? It's decreasing weights. I think you get like 1 for your current score and 0.9 for the previous one, 0.8, and so on. There's something along those lines. I can't remember. I asked once and it's posted somewhere, but yeah.
Yeah. And to be very much outdone, Leonid, his prediction Rionito, he was 7th for this Banzuke prediction, and
Nice.
overall he is number 2 on Guess the Banzuke. So we got a real heavyweight cast here telling you about how the Banzukes are put together. 2 of the top 10 Banzuke predictors, I'm going to say, in the entire world right here. So
At least in like the very niche English language online sumo community.
the entire world.
The
Jake.
entire world of
Yeah.
the people in that category. Yes.
Yes.
No, I do think that's super cool that, it's Leonid, you've been helping out with Ryan in particular, learning how it works. And I think it's clear that studying under you unofficially has clearly shown some results. So it's always fun to have you on here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Jake, as Leonid pointed out to me before we started recording, he is sporting the wrong podcast's shirt today. He is wearing his Sumo Mainichi
That's
shirt.
too bad.
As they gifted him that shirt for teaching them about the Banzuke. And so I think it is far past due that Leonid
For Leonid to buy a shirt from us. You're absolutely right.
You're GD right. It costs full price for you, Leonid. No discounts.
Oh man.
Awesome.
All right, we'll talk about finances. We'll see. But maybe we can pull some strings.
Yeah.
Is there a layaway plan? Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe if we have some spare stock or something, sometimes we can get you 10% off or something.
Yeah.
Cool.
Here at Grand Sumo Breakdown, we don't stop at tracking just how many people we had at the exact correct rank or the correct numerical rank. We figure out how much did we miss overall. So if I missed one Rikishi by 2 spots and then another Rikishi by 3 spots, all of those added together, what is that total? So total of 26 for this basho. So I missed all 42 Rikishi by a combined 26 spots. So that's an average of 0.619 miss per Rikishi, which
I'm
is
trying
pretty.
to make a Rey Mysterio joke, but I can't remember the stupid nonsense phrase he yells.
Booyaka, booyaka, 619.
That's the one. Thank you. I know enough about pro wrestling to know the joke was there. So thank you for taking the assist.
Yeah. And then also like to track what my worst guess was. And so, like I had mentioned, I only ever missed anybody by 1 full numerical rank. So that's 2 spots on the Banzuke. And there, I had 6 guys off by that. So that matches my previous best worst guess of only being off by 2. Looking at the overall stats of the Banzuke, our biggest jumps up the Banzuke are going to be Abi jumping up 9 ranks, Hokuto Fuji jumping up 8 ranks. Our biggest drops down the Banzuke, we're going to have Kodoeko dropping 9 spots and Miyogiryu and Aoyama both dropping down 7 spots. We will have 5 Rikishi at their career high, Ura, Aqua, Ichi Yamamoto, Wakamoto Haru, and Oho. And we will also have 2 Rikishi making their Makuuchi debut, those being Wakamoto Haru and Oho.
Does that mean that 2022 has already equaled 2021's total for top division debuts?
Absolutely. And hopefully we surpass that in Haru. Would love to see Bushozan make the jump up. He's like a smaller Takakeisho. So
But he's been on a pretty solid run, right? He's like
he's been consistently rising up the Juryo ranks. He debuted.
Yeah, I take it back. He's not who I was thinking of. He's been in sumo since 2014 and spent basically that entire time in Makushita. But over the last year or so, he's just been working his way up steadily through Juryo. So
Yeah,
definitely turned a corner here in 2021.
Yeah, he's had 4 straight winning records down in Juryo, and he's at Juryo 1 West. So hopefully, yeah, we'll see a lot more newcomers this year than we did all of last year. But
yeah, the guy I'm super excited about is Atami Fuji, who is now at Makushita 1 West. And he's a super young guy. I can't remember exactly how old.
Looks like he's 19 years old.
He's just been tearing his way out through the lower divisions, and he's 1 Kachikoshi away probably from making Sekitori.
Yeah,
cool.
so Atami Fuji, he had his first actual, not including Maizumo, he debuted Hatsu 2021, got 2 straight U shows to start off, hasn't had less than 5 wins in any basho.
He's
and will
36-6 in his entire career. That is a very solid first year.
Yep. And he's in Isekahama stable, so he's training with Teruno Fuji, Takano Fuji, Teruto Yoshi. There's plenty top division guys that he's learning from. So that'd cool. Actually be really exciting to see him jump up to Juryo if he could within a year and a half of his debut.
One other one, we have the potential return of Ryuden in March. He's at Makushita 5 after winning the Makushita Yusho last time. So he's probably like 5 wins or so, might get him back into Juryo. And another couple basho, we might see him in the top division again.
Yep. Hokuseiho drops down to Makushita 12 after his absence from the previous basho. Hopefully he can have a quick turnaround and get back into Juryo. Yeah, so
he'd need another Makushita Yusho
from that range
to come back immediately. And that's actually going to be a very tough race, I think, with Ryuden and several Atami Fuji and several others. It's going to be a real battle royale down there for the guaranteed Sekitori 7-0 spot.
Tomokaze is kind of threatening the top of Makushita again.
Yep.
His rise back up has not been meteoric, but he and Ryuden are kind of like newly healthy / unsuspended former high-ranking Makuuchi wrestlers that are probably going to make it a little tough on some of the younger guys in Makushita, but
yeah. And Chiyonumi, who was a Juryo stalwart pretty recently until getting injured, is up there. So it's going to be pretty fun watching the lower divisions.
Yeah, I'm going to have to pay more attention to Makushita than I usually do. That's pretty cool.
One more note that might confuse people. We have Asanoyama in Juryo. I think he's at Juryo 4 this basho. He will be suspended for 3 more tournaments, and he might end up fairly close in rank to Asonoyama, who is at Makushita 32. So don't get confused if you see Asanoyama passing by Asonoyama.
That should not be allowed. That is ridiculous.
there is also, there are all sorts of fun shikona, since apparently they use a very limited number of kanji and just permute them. There is a Fuji no Teru, who Hiruth always calls the off-brand Teru no Fuji.
Yeah, we have Ho Shoryu and O Shoryu.
Yep.
That's one that we've joked about before. Yeah, that's funny.
Chio Shoma, there's just O Shoma.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's not fair bringing the Chios into the mix here. There's like 30 of them, and they're all almost the same.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's funny.
All right. We'll get to awarding the snub of the Banzuke and luck of the Banzuke. So the candidates that we had, I had Daisho for not getting the Komusubi East spot. I had Endo for being ranked both behind Tamawashi and Ichi Nojo. Hide no Umi for being ranked behind Takano Fuji. And then I kind of lumped together Shima no Umi, Chiyotairyu, Aoyama, all for kind of getting ranked below somebody who in past Banzukes we'd typically see them ranked ahead of.
The tiebreaker group, right?
Yeah. I ended up giving the snub of the Banzuke to Endo here because while Hide no Umi ended up ranked behind somebody he deserved to be ranked 1 ahead of, Endo got ranked behind somebody he deserved to be 2 ranks ahead of in Ichi Nojo. So I am going to give Endo the snub of the Banzuke award on this one. And then luck of the Banzuke candidates I had were Kiribayama, only dropping 1 rank for a 6-9 record. Ichi Nojo only dropping 2 ranks for his 5-10 record. Onosho dropping 3 ranks for his 5-10. Tobizaru staying at the same exact rank despite 2 straight losing records. And then Aqua jumping up 6 ranks after a 9-6 record. And if I gave it to Endo for snub of the Banzuke, I'm going to give it to Ichi Nojo for luck of the Banzuke. It's not typical that I give the same situation both sides of the snub luck coin, but this one I think certainly called for it.
Yeah,
that's fair.
The most interesting individual weirdness on this one. Yeah.
Yep. Would you have given it another way, Leonid, or do you think?
No, I think that's totally fair. I think given that this was going to be a lucky Banzuke with the extra slots opening up, there aren't really any snubs. But
yeah, it was tough to find the snubs.
I kind of agree that Endo has the most reason to complain, and Ichinoju is for sure luck of the Banzuke, as we can't figure out how he possibly ended up, not only where he is, but within half a rank of where he is.
Yeah. All right, and then we always like to track what Jake thinks my worst guess will be, and thank goodness he missed this one.
Happy to be wrong.
Yep, because we even as I predicted Oho to be ranked in Makuuchi ahead of Kageyaki, I was saying there's no way it's actually going to happen, and Jake agreed with me, but luckily we were both wrong, but I was still kind of right. Well, no, I was still mostly right, but kind of wrong.
Whatever. But yes, we both in our heart of hearts expected Kageyaki to luck out one more time.
Yep. All right, so this will wrap up our Bonsuke coverage. Leonid, before we do our whole social media blast, want to thank you again for coming onto this podcast, teaching us a little bit more about the Bonsuke. I really do need to thank you, as the entire way that I rank the Bonsukes and try to figure it out is based on some advice that you gave me a long time ago. So you really are a huge help to me and a lot of other people when discussing the Bonsuke. So just want to give you another thank you that you have very well earned, and a chance to promote yourself however you would like.
I'll just thank you for having me on, and it's really fun to nerd out on Banzuke with somebody else who cares about it as much as I do.
Yes, definitely. I have Jake here, but he's listening 33% of the time at best, so it really is nice to have someone who knows what I'm saying.
I do enough other stuff in the background that I'm here for Ryan to have a target to talk at. But no, it's a very interesting. It's so fun that sumo has like so many different weird little niches within its greater niche to dive into, and the Bansuke one in particular is one that that's exactly Ryan's brand.
Yep.
Yeah, mine too. As a numbers guy, this just pulled me right in. And I guess in terms of a plug, people should read the Tachiai blog, where there is great coverage of the basho, all sorts of other stuff in terms of sumo history, traditions, etc. And then I do some kind of where things stand post in the latter portions of each tournament, and then usually do a Banzuke prediction and a Banzuke prediction review afterwards.
All right. So if you enjoy this podcast and the Tachiai blog, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast listening service. You can also find us at Grand Sumo Breakdown on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. Jake, what else do we got?
We got Instagram. We got Patreon, if you think that what we're doing deserves any feeble donations. We got a blog, grandsumobreakdown.wordpress.com, all the good stuff.
And if you have any comments, corrections, or questions, you can leave us an email at grandsumobreakdown@gmail.com, or you can give us a call and leave us a voicemail at 805-613-7866. That is 805-613-SUMO. We will be recording the Hatsu preview in the next couple of days for the Hatsu Basho that starts this Sunday, January 9th. Thank you once again, Leonid, for joining us. It was great talking with you, and everybody else, you can hear us in a couple of days.
Thank you for listening to Grand Sumo Breakdown. Until next time,
Throw your salt high.
and keep moving forward.